nation where we're busy putting death out of business. And this is a show that you people out there, you need this show more than you know. This is the show that's trying to unravel global chaos. Maybe I should make that the new theme. Let's unravel global chaos, because, you know, we've been trying to tell people there are different solutions to problems. You know, they don't want to listen. Suddenly the problems start to pop up, and everyone panics, they all freak out, and they all wonder what the heck is going on. Very interesting times we live in. But to help us through, we got Ben Zion 2020 being very, very vicious, but always great on the campaign trail. We love what you're doing, Ben, out there. I'm watching your feed. You're getting really tough on some of the people in power. We'll talk more about that in a sec. And we also have Mr. Orji from Nigeria. He's a lawyer. He's going to join us for a second as well and help us through this crisis. So before we do that, let's thank our sponsor, Thrivous. You are beautiful, and we love you, and your nootropics are great. Open source nootropics, geoprotectors. We also, you know the deal. It's in the description. You share the link around. You can go from $5 all the way up to $160 worth of Thrivous. That's the best deal on the damn internet. So, you know, share that link around. Say thanks, Thrivous, and we all thank Thrivous. Thanks also to I Am Transhuman for helping to sponsor this show. Bam! All right, Ben, quickly, over to you. We're going to just rock into this breaking news. Emergency in the USA. The USA. You know, I've been talking a lot, Ben, about the isolationism of the North American continent, okay? The breakdown of Bretton Woods, the isolationism of the North American continent, and how it was going to impact. Now, I didn't, and this is why it's called a black swan event, okay? I didn't envision that a pandemic was going to accelerate everything I was going to talking about. I was expecting this sort of normal, natural cascade of history to open up this stuff, but Americans are suddenly realizing all the geography I've been talking about, the fracturing of the supply lines. I mean, we've got cube spawn down there. That would have sorted out a lot of problems. But Ben, there's been a declaration of an emergency in the USA. It's all starting to shape up there. You've got almost $100 billion now on the corona. Trump sort of muddled through on a TV speech and said something about a $40 billion injection, and now he's declared another $40 billion injection into as emergency stimulus. What's happening there in the United States, Ben? You're all over it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Steele. And it's wonderful to see you both. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. You know, it's been an interesting few days since we last spoke, since we were last on this program together. A lot has changed. Just today, the largest school district by far in the country, the Los Angeles Unified School District, is closed. And a number of others, entire states, in fact, Ohio, Maryland, a few others. There are statewide closures because of coronavirus concerns. We've seen other institutional shutdowns deriving from these concerns. This has become a serious consideration in recent days and recent hours. And as we know, there's well over 1,000 infections across the United States. We don't have the precise kind of infrastructure that we should have had to address this. In fact, there was a report yesterday on National Public Radio that described how Trump, more than 5 weeks ago, had projections that told us that this coronavirus problem was going to grow out of control. But he felt at that time that it was better to ignore those concerns because he felt that downplaying those numbers and downplaying those potential problems would be increase his chances of winning this general election in November. So effectively, like the cutting National Institutes of Health expenses, like cutting corners in many of these other related areas, have contributed not only to this problem in North America, but have contributed to the global spread, because as we know, the United States plays a big role in these kinds of international dealings. And this is quite sad. It's in fact quite tragic. I will say that about Ben Zion 2020, my presidential campaign, and about the futurist New Deal, one definite good point there is that with Ben Zion's I Vote USA, or blockchain voting initiative, no one will get coronavirus at a polling booth on election day ever again, because you will be voting from your cell phone and confirming that vote from your desktop computer. This is more efficient in the long term. It's cheaper. It avoids these disease vectors. We should be doing this for many years, as the Estonians have. We should be embracing iVoting and e-governance. iVote USA is one of many initiatives that will help address concerns and move us into potential.
Crossing over to Nigeria, how are you reacting to this in Nigeria? Obviously, America being pretty much shut down because of the coronavirus. How is the impact there in Nigeria? What's the thought from Nigeria, Mr. Orji?
Okay, thank you very much. Here in Nigeria, we have had 2 cases. Actually, an Italian came in with it, and he has been quarantined. Today, he was declared, yesterday he was declared negative. The same thing with a Nigerian who came in contact with him and had the virus. 2 of them today. We are declared, yesterday we are declared negative. So we don't have any fresh case of coronavirus. And the about 180-something passenger that boarded the same flight, the Turkish airline that came in with the Italian man, all of them, they were quarantined. All of them tested negative. Up till now, no symptoms of coronavirus. So they were released discharged yesterday after spending 14 days in quarantine.
Wow, yeah. So that's I'm not sure if that's good or bad news. It sounds like Nigeria so far has maintained its containment phase, but of course we know that Nigeria is probably a little bit under-resourced. Do you feel like Nigeria is under-resourced, just like America is, in preparing for this coronavirus?
Oh, I think the experience we had with Ebola,
yes,
the other time, really prepared us for this, because here we had similar issues in Liberia, where one Patrick Sawyer brought it here to Nigeria, and we battled. We had some few deaths, like about 6 people died. I think within 2 months, it was curtailed in Nigeria. And that was a salutary experience to Nigerians. And we, after then, we had to take proactive measure. Before we had the coronavirus here, we were adequately prepared for it. But not, I think we were adequately prepared because our ministers, people here, we had to galvanize before time for eventualities. And when we had it, we tackled it. And I think that made the difference.
Wow, yeah. Ben Zion, how would you have approached the coronavirus, knowing the timeline, if you were president or going into this campaign season, what would you say about this coronavirus? How would you have handled things different? How would you handle things differently? Do you think that the $50 billion in emergency funding is good, bad, not enough? What do you think of Bernie Sanders' response to all of this? He made an incredible speech. A lot of people are leaning on the side of Bernie Sanders now because they're starting to really think about healthcare, especially the 80 million underinsured healthcare providers. What do you say, Ben, in the United States on your campaign, and also a reflection on Bernie Sanders?
Yes. Well, this $50 billion stimulus that derives from this national emergency declaration of the president, I hope that it'll be well allocated, and it's certainly a good move in this respect. These are serious concerns, and as I mentioned before, concerns which might not have been wholly necessary in the precise same way had this president acted sooner. And we could put this up to a simple oversight, but I do think that it could conceivably also be regarded as something rather more cynical. As I mentioned before, this kind of action has been undertaken to some degree as a kind of political calculus, perhaps not wanting to run any risks in negative publicity in a campaign in an election season. Similarly, things of this kind have been known to happen because Trump has said in press releases that his prospects for winning an election might be improved in the wake of some kind of big geopolitical event. And now here we are. There is such an event, and I don't know that this is truly playing to his favor, but it's a little bit strange that he has made those allusions.
What do you say to how do you respond, Mr. Orji here from Nigeria? He just said that Nigeria is quite prepared because they remember Ebola. Okay, why is the United States not as prepared? It's much richer. It should be much more prepared. What's going on with the deficit of preparedness that we're hearing all across the world about how the United States is responding? What's up with the deficit of preparedness, Ben Zion 2020?
Yes, sir. Well, as we know, every other country in the developed world has something like a public health service, has something like Medicare for all or universal healthcare. And the United States does not. The United States has healthcare for specific segments of the population and a rather tough for-profit system for the rest of the middle class. And this failing to provide for citizens, this failing to consider the workings of a public health service and how it relates to concerns of this kind is central to this problem. Just today, Tulsi Gabbard, a wonderful human being, proposed a series of stimulus package responses to these concerns, including a stopgap basic income and measures of the kind that we are describing. And this is what the United States should be doing. The fact that we do not entertain this to a high enough degree historically as people, and also our leaders dismiss these kinds of initiatives almost out of hand, reflects a kind of callousness and honestly something that is shameful for the wealthiest country on earth, that we should be having these kinds of problems. Countries with a fraction of our per capita income handle these kinds of things with relative ease. Some of those countries also have outbreaks at this time, but they're better poised to deal with these things. They are not having, for example, shortages of tests. They are not having, for example, other kinds of situations where they're just scratching their heads and not knowing what to do at all because they have people and institutions that have considered these things and are working to see that they are attractive.
Yeah, and I mean, we are talking about millions of people's lives at stake here, especially in the elderly population demographic, well known as the baby boomer generation, particularly and above. Mr. Orji, what advice can you give? Because I'm not sure you lived through Ebola in your country in Nigeria. You lived through that crisis. Obama was the president then. They gave some assistance. What can you tell us from your experience with that? What happens to people in that scenario? Do they panic? Do they get violent? Do the stores run out of goods and services? What's the type of psychological state? Can you inform us? What is the mental, psychophysical reaction from a population that starts to get scared like that?
Okay, I think when it comes to Ebola, the issue of Ebola, Nigeria containing it, it was actually entirely our own effort. Yeah, maybe United States of America helped countries like Liberia and some other smaller countries. But when it comes to Nigeria, it was Nigeria's solution. It was Nigeria solution alone, solely Nigerian solution. And then I could remember them vividly very well. I was in my final years, University of Lagos, and I was an active student union, one of the leaders in the school, the student union executive. There was a lot of fear when this issue came up here in Nigeria, the issue of Ebola. We had to buy sanitizer, hand sanitizer. Some of us stopped shaking people. At a point, some people took baths with salt, a lot of things. Some people did a lot of crazy stuff. I think at a particular point, we get to actually face this thing, and we eradicated it. The Lagos State government, under the administration of Babatunde Fashola, really tried, because I would say it was not just the federal government. I think the Lagos State government, because the Lagos State was the epicenter of the virus in Nigeria. Patrick Suya came into Nigeria. He wanted to leave the hospital even when he was confirmed that he was carrying the virus. Dr. Adedevo, one of our doctors, held him, and this doctor later died because of it. And actually, she sacrificed her life for us. And we had I think just about 6 deaths. And I think within 3 months, we were able to curtail it. What did we do differently? We actually faced it. We had an action plan. The Lagos State government devised an action plan, a strong action plan, very cogent, and we were able to eradicate it. I want to tell the world, the advice I want to give to the world or rest of the other country, this is not a time to play politics. I actually follow the event of what is happening in the United States of America. This is not a time to say I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. This is not a time to say I'm gay, I'm white, I'm straight. This is not a time to say I'm Christian, I'm that. This is a time to galvanize together as a country. This is the time to remove the differences, justicing the differences, and come together as a country. Because you are not going to tackle this thing with a fractured society, a society that is not united. It's not just the president that is saddled with this kind of solution. I think everybody should rise up to the occasion. Everybody, we have currently I learned even the mask, sanitizers, shortage of the doctors are now readily available. I think this is not the time to have shortage of anything. This is not just the time to have shortage of anything. This is just the time to be brave about it. I told some people the other day, coronavirus is not a death sentence. It's not a death sentence. In a situation, it can only be made worse in a situation where we have shortage of doctors, where we don't have facility for people to test themselves, where we have everywhere is shut down, no food and all these things. I think now is the time where the state government, the federal government in the United States of America should have an action plan a strong action plan. I think the president should use his office, the bully puppy syndrome, to galvanize his country, to sway them to action. Every country rely or look up to the United States of America. I love the country a lot. We have learned it was one of the best country in the world. I'm not going to say they are wonderful country, and I'm not minding what. So they have to show the world the leadership. They are the big brother to other countries. If Nigeria can tempt I think we should close our border now, maybe for 1 month, or everybody, we should shut until no movement, movement, international movement, until this epidemic is brought.
You're breaking up a bit, but I think you said at the end there, was it Nigeria should close the borders? Who should close the borders?
Yeah, I said everybody in the world, we should minimize movement.
Right.
Of people from one country to another. Now is the time to have interlude. We should be able to control this virus.
I will say that the people of the European Union, business leaders and politicians, just found out within the past 48 hours about Trump's EU travel ban. They found out about it from CNN. So this sort of thing should not be undertaken in this fashion. People should be given fair warning and consulted with. This was a rather reckless unilateral action on the part of President Trump. I don't know that that is such a poor choice for the people of North America. But we have to consider in these things the other folks who are affected.
Yeah, well, as I've been trying to tell people, breakdown of Bretton Woods, this is a glimpse into what the future looks like, because eventually everything will start to recover. This will become a period where people will start to go, oh yeah, I remember that. But I'm telling you people, after that little permafrost, we're going back. This is the future, okay? You're going to go back. When we get to the future, we're going to go back to the future. And what this is now here, this is the precursor to Back to the Future. And it's the main point is that they want to shift manufacturing back to the North American continent. And this is the deal. And there's a lot going on the currency markets, in the stock markets, in the bond market. There's a lot going on, and this is one of those giant events, and it's just showing you, it's a glimmer of everything that I've been talking about, of what is to come. So think about that, and think about that as you move into the future and where you want to be, who you want to, because you know who's one of the smartest people? One of the smartest people is Rowan Horn. That guy's incredible. What was his nugget of wisdom? He says your health is your wealth, and people are starting to realize that. They're looking at their paper stocks and they're saying, oh look, I'm a billionaire, I'm a multi-billionaire person because I have wealth on paper. But then as soon as their health is at threat, they go, oh, I'm a mere mortal. My wealth is actually my health. And people are realizing this, and this is what this show, this is what transhumanism, this is what these solutions down here, we don't do this for fun. This is what gene therapy, all of the stuff that we talk about here on this show are solutions to overcoming these problems, and the immense amount of stress that the world is under now can be mitigated, can be navigated, and it doesn't have to be done in such a dramatic way where, people throw themselves out of windows, because they're stress heads. I mean, this can be navigated in a peaceful way. And this pandemic, this coronavirus, is showcasing human fragility in some of the worst ways. Sorry.
Yeah, and again, that callousness that we see in the United States. Particularly amongst political leaders, it doesn't benefit people to be independently wealthy, as you mentioned, but to be in this precarious kind of situation. You can't take it with you, and this is this. People are realizing this now, and we've had this conversation many times, Steele, prior to this escalation of the coronavirus, in the context of universal super longevity, so a central idea in the techno-futurist project, in the context of a public health service that treats aging as a disease, of using these new technologies, of using network effects to do an awful lot more with less. And we can see the exact same thing in the context of the coronavirus. And it's why we need this kind of spirit of cooperation. It's why we need to understand these institutions and grow and strengthen these institutions and find ways to work together and improve them in the many areas that they need improving, but not undermine them, not throw out the baby with the bathwater in these ways by disregarding the utility and possibility of these powerful institutions. We need a public health service in the United States so that the next time there is a coronavirus, we have a president who takes the initiative and does what he will to prevent it from becoming a global pandemic, who does what he must to see that citizens' lives are saved. Because this opposite effect that we described at the top of the show, this incident that was reported on by National Public Radio, Trump's oversight, or perhaps intentional oversight on this subject, this is effectively this is a president committing murder. This is an inaction that leads to deaths, where any better class of leader, having done otherwise, would have saved many lives, and that's unacceptable. And it's all well and good now that the president has declared a national emergency and earmarked these funds to deal with this problem, but it's a little bit like this too little, too late kind of scenario, to my thinking.
Well, it's always too late when it's not preventative, and that you have to be in the preventative box. You have to prevent problems from happening. Mr. Orji, in Africa, what type of impact do you think that the markets crashing and all that will have on Africa? Do you see a bright spot, or is it all doom and gloom?
Okay, I think one of the greatest or the harshest impacts of this coronavirus, especially here in Nigeria, the only impact we have been facing is the close down of the market, because currently Nigeria is a country that rely on crude oil, and currently we don't have off-takers. The off-takers are not there. And they is actually very soon we might be sliding to recession. It's just going to is a very big one. It's a very, very, very big one. Currently, some of the governors, we are saying that they cannot be able to pay salaries, things, and it's actually a very bad time for the world. Though here the coronavirus, we might not be getting it, we are not having it, it's not prevalent. However, the economic aspect of it, we are really suffering it here in Nigeria. We are really suffering it.
Yeah, and this is a byproduct of having all this just-in-time global supply chain problems. The world got into this frenzy of everything has to be just-in-time manufacturing, where it arrives at the warehouse and then it's shipped automatically off into houses, and there's no reserves, there's no thinking for tomorrow. And I think that this no thinking for tomorrow is prevalent in our society. It's very much a now culture. It might be different in Africa. I know it's definitely like that in America. They don't think much about tomorrow. It's the same as here in Australia. They don't think much about tomorrow. The transhumanist-party obviously thinks about tomorrow. They're trying to stave off existential threats for humanity. So that basically, that whole framework is thinking about tomorrow. But yes, I found the whole system is very much in line with this just-in-time manufacturing. And if one kink in the system breaks down, you end up with a global recession or depression. What type of system is that? That is a disgusting system. That's a stupid system. Who came up with this? Who came up with this?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, Steele. What you said about the prescience of the transhumanist project and the transhumanist party. Today, very much in the news in the past few days. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Tulsi Gabbard, in a somewhat different iteration, Ro Khanna, in proposing an earned income tax credit. But this is fundamentally these are all fundamentally basic income stimulus packages designed to help us deal with these concerns. I mentioned at the top of the show that that I-voting mitigates some of these disease vector concerns at the poll in voting and at the polling booth. Also, of course, the most obvious. Speaking also of the futurist New Deal for America, the Medicare for All Plus, my proposal for a public health service that uses advanced technology, and of course this single payer framework to reduce costs and have better outcomes. All of these things are having a good day. People are realizing that these futurist ideas are actually good ideas when they are forced to consider them in these difficult circumstances.
And
it's a little bit like with our friend Zoltan Isfin, sort of Andrew Yang copying his homework and using his proposals from the 2016 election on a bigger stage in 2020. If you want to see what is coming and anticipate and use better policy ideas, don't look to the Democrats 4 years from now. Look to the Transhumanist Party today, because we are thinking seriously about these problems. We are trying to find solutions, and this has been a good day. These ideas in my futurist New Deal for America, I Vote USA, helps with these concerns. Medicare for All Plus helps with these concerns. Of course, the middle class freedom dividend pays great dividends to society in enhancing our economy, besides simply the stopgap measures that have been proposed, which of course are very admirable, but we want to see the economy strengthened in a much, much larger context. Please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted your campaign speech, but no, very good speech. But I have to say to the audience, please recognize what I'm trying to do here with this show. Okay, I tried to tell you that this was going to happen. The timing was a bit off because this is a bit of a black swan, but I'm trying to tell you this is what's going to happen. Here are solutions. Here's the community. Let's keep this community. Let's make it stronger. And listen, I know this is going to go into hard times, but if you can just donate $5 a month, I can do more shows, connect the community up. Once we get to 1,000 members, subscribers on YouTube, if I get to 1,000, I can relaunch ads. That means I can start generating an income, and eventually I could pay people within our community, and that can generate, a worldwide community of people who are problem solvers, who are thinking, who are mitigating the fear that you're fearing now, the fear that you fear now, whether you're losing money hand over the fist because you've got it in stocks, which you shouldn't have done, but anyway, or you had it in the bond market. The fear that you're feeling, this is going to go away. Okay, as the world comes back online, as coronavirus is cured, or drugs come out, it's going to go away. Don't forget this fear. Support this channel, support me, and let me support you back, and let's grow this community. Please, just give me a chance to do that. And I can do this. I can do this, and then we can mitigate this fear. We can mitigate this fear. We can mitigate it. We can come up with solutions. We can generate a substantial feedback loop. We can run off pre-existing people. We've got doctors and experts and lawyers in Nigeria. We could, and projects. Look, Project 222 and Transpire and CubeSpawn and Talk Spectrum and I Am Transhuman and Stop Killer Robots. The Killer Robots thing still exists, people. It hasn't got away. They're still manufacturing killing robots while all this is going on. Tafts is doing a fantastic thing. And Tom Ross, the super AI stuff is not going away. None of it's going away. We're all just talking Corona right now, but it's all sitting there in the background. So support this channel, share this stuff, watch the videos, share it with your friends, subscribe. I need 1,000 subs because then I can run ads, for example. Otherwise I have to go to work, or, if I even have a job, I don't have a job anymore. But, I can't support this community as much as I would love to. And, I think we need each other now more than we've ever needed each other before. And we can spill those effects over into the broader community, and we can start coming up with solutions. Otherwise I'll have to fold, and you'll figure out something else. Go back to the USTP in the bedroom. That's really mean to say, but it's kind of true.
Yes. And I'd like to say something. I want to say firstly that Steele Archer is a man with precisely the kind of prescience that we've talked about in other contexts. He anticipated many of these concerns that we're seeing in the marketplace, many of these ways in which we have been inadequately prepared, and so you should immediately subscribe. Just ask your friends to subscribe to this channel if you want to stay on the inside and know what is coming next with these kinds of concerns. You should be subscribing to this program.
We need each other. We need each other as a community. If I break, the community will start to crack, and that's not good. You can try and reform it some other way if you want, but that's not as fun. It's not as efficient. Mr. Orji, what do you think? What do you think about all of this? Does it stress you out?
No, it doesn't. Are
you a transhumanist?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic.
I am.
What brought you into transhumanism?
Okay, transhumanism from the word alone is self-explanatory. I'm the type that I don't discriminate. I don't discriminate. As I told you the other time, I see every human being as one, and a platform like this is a catalyst to solve issues that concerns humanity. They say injury to one is an injury to all. So is an injustice in any place is injustice everywhere. Humanity, we need each other. Everybody, we need each other, whether it's happening in China, whether it's happening in US or any place. So we need such synergy like transhumanism, like this platform. So I encourage everyone to subscribe. If you are watching this show, tell your friend to subscribe to this channel. We need to make it to go viral.
Yeah, I thank you. I thank you for those comments. I need to start really campaigning for 1,000 people, and then I can run ads, and that will start to make some relief, because I want to do more shows than ever before. I think the community, as a community, need each other now more than ever. Yes. I am so excited, and I can't, I'm sitting here in this spot talking to you wonderful people because I kind of knew this stuff was going to happen, and I wanted to have some sort of solution policy in order to do it. But I'm very sad that it's here and it's happening, and that we actually have to be in this position because of corrupt politicians, because of corrupt bankers, because of corruption all around the globe, and incompetence. And Benzine, you know, we don't always agree on everything, but at least you have some sort of you're a statesman and a scholar, and you're true to your word on these issues, and you've been really good on this journey, and keep going.
Yes, thank you, sir. You're too kind. Yes, I want to say a little bit about that corruption and about these wrong-headed approaches to these things. Of the last 12 hours, as we mentioned, there have been these stimulus packages proposed that are substantively different from past proposals. But the response to some earlier proposals at a time when concerns about coronavirus has not quite ratcheted up to the point that they are today, Republicans had made efforts to undermine and dismiss those things. They were a little bit more diffuse in their attempts of this kind now because they were realizing that this is not a good situation for them to be attacking efforts to deal with these very real concerns. But we spoke of this yesterday, you and I, Steele, in a private conversation. Yesterday, $1.5 trillion of quantitative easing was done. Yes, to no real effect. This was an ill-conceived, and there was no pushback from very few Democrats or Republicans as to the wisdom of this. There was not the economic conservative concern trolling that you hear from people when something of a similar scale, like, for example, debt forgiveness for students is proposed, or a stopgap basic income is proposed. There was no discussion there. Everybody was completely willing.
It's the same thing as the GFC. It's the same thing as 2008. They bailed out the creditors and not the debtors. They didn't bail out the middle class. The money went from Main Street to Wall Street. This is the same thing. They sit there all day and complain about, this, a $1 trillion green fund, to invest in green energy. And they'll sit there in Congress and argue for hours and hours. But then you have a dip in the stock market, in the NASDAQ or something, and suddenly there's Jerome Powell, the Fed governor, shoveling money into the fireplace like you wouldn't believe, and nobody blinks an eye. That's millions. This is the same thing, shifting the wealth transfer from Main Street to Wall Street, and this has been the big problem. And this is why we said on the day of the stock market apocalypse, there needs to be economic justice, and there needs to be a rising up in America. Hopefully, they don't get infected, but there needs to be a rising up type scenario of the coronavirus, of the Occupy Wall Street,
Yeah.
and the people like yourself, or Democrats, or Libertarians, Vermin Supreme, everybody should be talking about this.
And this essential failing in this trickle-down economic approach to these concerns, this complete disregard for the middle class, this complete disregard for common sense in this situation. This is not an accident. This is not a mistake. This is what happens when your government is effectively a wholly owned subsidiary of Koch Industries. This is not a good situation to be in for citizens. And this is a kind of point in history where these problems, this lack of consideration, this lack of regulatory consideration, this lack of common sense in crafting these approaches, this entire class of politicians and influencers and lobbyists who are completely cynical about trying to solve problems or deal with this situation, who are just suckling at one particular teat to the detriment of everyone else. And now this situation has come to a head, and we are looking at 40. What are the losses in the last month in the marketplace? This is more or less unprecedented in this particular kind of situation.
The biggest crash since '89. Biggest crash since '89, and we haven't started yet. That's the big problem. And this wasn't this. I don't think this is the crash that I was predicting. I think the crash that I was predicting is further down the road, depending on how many of the demographic crisis, because my crash was based on demographic crisis, and that's why this Blackest Swan event has sort of pushed this forward. But it's the same tricks. It's the same old tricks of robbing poor people and giving to the rich, and it's going on again, and they're getting more sophisticated every time they do it. To pump up phony wealth, and it's hurting everybody around the world. The world is seriously stressed. The whole globe is stressed. The whole globe is fully stressed. And I love your point, Mr. Orji. You've got the solution. It's time for people to rally as humanity, as people, not as Republicans and Democrats, as independents, as social justice warriors, or black or white or Asian. It's us as a collective to stand up to corruption. Mr. Orji in Nigeria.
And I will say that
Mr. Orji in Nigeria.
I will say that I'm wearing a tie with many flags, and in some hope to be expressing this to some degree, this transnationalist sentiment.
Mr. Orji in Nigeria, you agree, right? We've got to stand up to this as a collective of humans.
Okay, please, can you come again, please?
Yes. So we have to stand up to the tyranny as a collective of humans, not as black and not as white and not as nationalists. This is a human problem, yes?
Yes, it's a human problem. We have to come together as human.
Yes. And you both expressed powerful sentiments in the course of this interview, as that I would say are very much pro-science sentiments, and this is something that's not always expressed in the United States in the public square, particularly coming from politicians, tending to be coming from particular parts of the country. So, for example, there's an awful lot of people who are not only have some small pulpit, but people who have radio stations, television stations at their disposal, who, when they're addressing these coronavirus concerns, what are they saying? God will help you. God will save you. All you need to do is pray. Now, maybe in a certain sense, these are heartwarming or lyrical kinds of expressions. But if this is used to deflect from ways to address these actual real-world concerns, this is a problem. And this kind of provincial thinking, this kind of superstitious and anti-intellectual thinking in the United States, it's rampant. And it's something that we need to try to do what we may to set it aside in favor of practicality and science-based
2020,
solutions.
80 million Americans are on psych medication, psychotic medication, and a lot of that's being produced in China, and it can't get to America right now. That makes that makes a little bit of a hard time for those people. Hopefully that they're well armed. Plenty of problems if you go there. Mr. Orji, I want to go back to you because your internet seems to be working now. Oh, he's gone again. When he comes back, that would be really good. But all right. Well, anyway, I think we should probably leave it there. I do want to get Mr. Orji. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Can you just comment for us on social justice about poverty in America and in Nigeria and around the world, where there's so many rich people who have so much money, and there's so many poor people, and the wealth inequality, and what you think of that?
Okay, I think there is so much inequality in the world.
Unfortunately,
Yes,
we're
I'd
having
like to.
internet issues.
I'll add to that.
Oh, hang on, Ben.
Since he
I
seems
think
to
he's
have cut
back.
out, I'll add to that by saying that
Hang on, Ben.
there is only.
Hang on, Ben. Mr. Orji in Nigeria. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, yes, I said there is so much inequality here in the world, and there's much more here in Nigeria. I think, as I said, we should, um, like the way we are tackling coronavirus, because coronavirus seems like to be a leveler, whether the poor or the rich, everybody just
Okay, you're back.
All right.
yes. If we can be able, if we can be able to galvanize the way we are doing towards this coronavirus, well, we will get most of our problems solved.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful point. And before we lose you again, in case you don't go away, I want to just say thank you so much for coming on the show. You're welcome back anytime, sir. Your very valuable statements, and we want to stay on top of the situation in Nigeria, because some of these poorer countries are going to have this. It's not going to be fun for those. So we wish you health and happiness and all the best, and we really appreciate your time, and we love you, and we love the Nigerian people as well. And you can come on anytime you want, sir, to evaluate us and update us with the news and all that's happening there as well. And we really appreciate your thoughts as well. They're, very, very, very good thoughts. And thank you for being transhuman as well. And I think
we should say that you and I both know some good folks in Nigeria, some people who work in the State Department there, and the response to this concern in Nigeria and in the region, but particularly Nigeria, has been as measured as that in the United States, if not more. As we mentioned, there's very, very little of this particular outbreak in this country, and that's praiseworthy, and it bears repeating. So kudos to the leadership there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're not talking about a small population. We're talking about almost 200 million people. Almost 200 million
people. The largest
people.
Country in Africa, and the largest city, Lagos, where our friend hails from.
Yes.
On that continent.
It's huge.
It's huge. Very huge.
Yeah. So you sir, welcome back to tell us and update us on Nigerian politics and what's happening in Nigeria, and all of the things that are interesting and happening. And as I said, thank you for being transhuman. But yes, almost 200 million people there. So that's both a plus and a minus. How do you cope with that many people in such a large country? In mitigating these impacts.
I am back.
All right, we're losing you again, Mr. Orji. I might say goodbye and finish up this show with Ben.
I'm back.
You're back. Your internet is not very good. So if I might finish this show up with Ben, but I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Permanently.
All right, Ben. So Mr. Orji's internet is not too good. We'll leave him And thank you very much, Mr. Orji, for coming on. So Ben, yes, we were talking about social inequality, wealth inequality, and it's just increasing in these times. It's increasing. These stock markets show you the disparity, and they're burning trillions of dollars without question. What does that mean?
Well, this is a serious consideration, and we mentioned that Nigeria is a big country, and there's and no country is, of course, perfect. We could say much the same thing of the United States, very large country, and geographically very large as well, and that makes some of these things not always the easiest thing to address. So, for example, countries that have more planned economies, or countries that deviate in different ways in their economic system, but those are tending to be small countries, countries that, in a word, do look more like a city-state than a vast and diffuse nation-state, and so it's some of the concerns that are expressed by economic conservatives when we discuss these matters. Those concerns are rooted in reality, but by and large, in the United States, those people are not legitimately economic conservatives. Those people are corporatist mouthpieces whose job is not to strengthen the middle class, whose job is not to see that you people are well taken care of. Their job is to see that this wholly owned subsidiary of Koch Industries does its job and make sure that Charles Koch, with his $60 billion net worth, doesn't have to give up much more than a few pennies of it. But
it's not just Charles Koch. It's the whole elite class. It's Bloomberg. It's Koch. It's Trump.
No, of course not.
It's Hillary.
It's a huge number.
It's the elite class, and
it's 6,000 billionaires like Charles Koch.
Yeah,
yes.
and that's the point. It's not just the fact that it's the whole class of people, and they work together in unison in order to keep that system tethered the way they want. You think they're stressing right now? If Bezos or somebody loses a couple of $1 billion, you think he loses any sleep? He doesn't lose any sleep. He's got mansions dotted all over the place. I mean, he doesn't lose any sleep. It's ordinary people that feel the destructive consequences when these people have a hissy fit. And that's all that's happening right now. These people are having a hissy fit, and they've decided to throw the whole society under the bus.
Yes, and I'm going to read a figure to you, Steele, and it's going to sound almost absurd. $6.4722 quadrillion. That's the amount of money that through ordinary regulatory mechanisms that we have been able to use for 100 years, that's the amount of money that could be taxed from these billionaires without reducing the number of billionaires by one. We could, if we were doing our jobs as Americans, if we were doing our jobs as the United States government, there would not be people amassing such an insane amount of wealth to the detriment
Ben,
of the functioning of the civil society.
I just want to go back to a quick reflection.
That's $6.4722 quadrillion. That could eradicate world hunger for 220 years to come. 1/20th of that amount of money could halt climate change in its tracks by 2030. The greatest existential risk conceivably of our time could be halted with 1/20th of that amount of money. And that would not reduce the quality of life of those billionaires. A billionaire there's no great quality of life in being a billionaire relative to having $20 million. All of these people have the same standard of living. The only difference between a man with $20 million and the man with $1 billion+ is an ability to engage in a lot of power politics at a geopolitical scale. And this is an important point, and it's one that is lost on American people who insist upon lionizing bad human beings, bad examples. You know, in a few generations, in a few decades, when we look back at history, we will look at these kind of industrialists and these kind of politicians in much the same way that we look at some young kids who get high and go up on an overpass and throw a bowling ball and hit someone driving by. We'll say, what is wrong with that person? What were they thinking? They threw away their lives. They destroyed someone else's life. That's how we are going to look in a short period of time at most of the people who we today regard as great leaders. And this is a problem in Americans thinking. We look too much. We're willing to overlook a multitude
and remember,
of flaws.
I am a capitalist. I like capitalism. I like the free exchange of goods and services. I just see the cronyism, and the cronyism has to go. When you get to this point in history, and you have so much cronyism, you can't bail out every single industry, you know. And then they play favorites, and the middle class is eviscerated. The poor class is eviscerated because they can't access healthcare anymore, and everybody goes down the gurgler, except for a very few, the tippity top 0.1%. And you're seeing it now. You're seeing it in real time. If you were too young to remember GFC, well, this is your time. You can experience it now. If you were too young to experience the other crashes, the dot-com bubble or the 87 or the 70s, now is your time to realize what these people in history were talking about. And they're going to screw you. They always screw you. And Ben's right. You know, I just wanted to go quickly back to something that we were talking about, Ben. You know, in the GFC, you know, and this is Obama, this is Hank Paulson, this is Jamie Dimon, this is the crew, and they bailed out the creditors. They bailed out the banks from Wall Street to Main Street. Now they're doing it again. They're doing it by stealth. They're doing it by printing money through the printing money and all that. But it's another bailout for the elites. What is the morality of that, Ben? That's immoral. That's immoral. You're talking about 350 million people plus the entire globe sacrificed for 0.1. It's not even the 1% anymore. We're talking about the tippity top of the tippity top. Ben, what's the morality of that?
Yes, it's reprehensible. It's reprehensible, and Trump is not the only person in this. Of course, the idea that Trump is the worst of this, or the originator of this, is many people. This is a common talking point amongst mainline Democrats. That idea is absurd. This global financial crisis that you alluded to of 2008 and 2007, 2008. Many of these kind of missteps of the kind that we've described, focusing on the bailouts for the wealthy and ignoring any concern for ordinary people. This sort of thing has been happening in the United States in various sectors for decades. And
it's been going on since the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913 in an institutional way, and it's only got worse. Then America had 2 civil wars against private central banking. It wasn't Jefferson said, "I beat the bank," or something like that. This has been going on now. The fleecing has been happening for at least on an institutional level of 100 years. Look, Ben, I got to go, but I love you very much. You keep campaigning. You're doing a great campaign. Stay strong, and I think the Bernie Sanders. Although Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, this campaign should be looking at somebody like you. for inspiration. You should join the cabinet or something, Ben. You should join up in the cabinet, or you should join as a advisor or something like that with one of these mainstream parties, and get these talking points and get the reality into these debates in the big parties, in the Democrats. Get it into the Democratic Party.
Yes, we do continue with that sort of outreach, and not limited, of course, to the democratic institutions. But we do, and we hope to be doing much more of that. I will say we have on Sunday at 6 Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, a tech policy debate that's going to be hosted on this channel with myself and yourself participating in different capacities on that very stage. And also, in addition to myself, Vermin Supreme, who we mentioned, will be joining us. Also, John McAfee and Adam Gokesh and some others. A wonderful discussion of technology policy. And that coincides also with the day of the Democratic debate coming up. The next Democratic debate is also Sunday evening, the 15th. I would encourage you to particularly tune into the former, and the latter was planned to be in my city here in Phoenix, Arizona. That event was canceled. First, they decided that there would be no live audience, understandable. Then the event was canceled, and now it's been moved to Washington, D.C. But there has been time and again, I made this, you mentioned at the top of the show that I was being quite critical of some parties. I made this point that all three of these people who are likely to be the next president, these three top contenders, they're all well into their 70s. And because of this corona outbreak and concerns stemming from this, these people are not campaigning in the same way, out of concerns for their health. But perhaps, just perhaps, we as a civilization, we as Americans rather, should consider that people who are this elderly in conditions like this, that maybe we should consider younger people and also people with younger ideas as better leaders, as better alternatives, particularly in a situation where these people are no longer able to campaign effectively because of concerns for their health. And God forbid that one of these gentlemen should pass, but it's not entirely unlikely. Right now, just within the past 3 days, a leading health official has said that projected that 150 million Americans could be infected with the coronavirus throughout the course of the cycling of this disease. And that means that 1 million Americans would die. Overwhelmingly, those would be elderly people. Overwhelmingly, those would be people like Joe Biden, like Donald Trump, like Bernie Sanders. They're at even higher risk because they're traveling around in this fashion. So we owe it to ourselves not to support and vote for people who are likely to be dead by election day. We need to be a little bit more strategic in our thinking about these things.
I remember there was a president who only lasted about 30 days because he did get pneumonia or something, and he died. I can't remember who that was, but
that was William Henry Harrison.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm not an American, but I remember that story. So who was it? Henry Harrison, President Henry.
It was William Henry Harrison, a president in the late 1800s.
All right, so we've got a lesson from history. We don't want to repeat that scenario, so let's not do that, right? But yeah, I think this is why we support the United States Transhumanist Party, because these guys offer bigger answers than any of this stuff that's being thrown. I mean, this is great stuff. Mitigating existential risk. I think everybody in the world is starting to think about existential risk now. Come to this show, people. And thanks, Ben Zion. Look, I got to go, but thanks so much. Share this clip around. Thanks to Mike DeVerde, Mr.
It's a pleasure as always. I will.
I mean the general audience, Mr. Shoemaker and Chairman Gennady for sponsoring this. If you know, now we need this show now more than ever. Really, people, $5 a month, okay? And I can generate more shows. Hopefully, we can get up to 1,000 subscribers. I can run ads. We can really get this community going. And I mean, you know, it's now you need this show. Now you realize why you need this show. It's called Debt Nation, right? You're living in my head, and it's not fun, is it? All right, well, all right. But Ben Zion, thank you so much for coming on. You're doing a great job on the campaign trail. Keep going.
Transhumanist-party.org/membership. Go there and sign up today. BenZion2020.com. Check it out. Learn more about the futurist New Deal for America. Stay tuned. I'm going to be breaking the Guinness World Record for longest period of continuous virtual reality usage in just a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. More exciting campaign events to come, like the one I mentioned on Sunday. Please sign up at our Facebook. You can see that through BenZion 2020. I'm getting long-winded again. Thank you, Steele, for your patience and for having me again. It's been wonderful.
And you know, if you're going into quarantine or isolation out there, there's so much content on Debt Nation. Just Google it, or go to the old playlist, or go to this channel. There's so much content. I mean, if you're gonna get locked down, I mean, I'm sorry my voice is so annoying, but the guests usually do all the speaking, and there's a lot of great content here. And you will be wishing that some of these people, or most of, if not all of these people who come on this show, had some sort of influence in public policy, because you would be having a much better time right now. Super abundance, super health, super well-being, super longevity. Doesn't that sound much more fun than World War III, depression, you know, superbugs, you know, all this other dystopic stuff? We're trying to help you. So rally now, support this channel. You need it now more than ever. The community needs it, because we can make a reciprocal loop. Okay, that's why I built this show, because I knew this was coming, and I found the audience and I found the community that has the solutions. Help me build this. Thanks, Mike DeVerde, for helping me. Thanks, Chairman Gennady, for helping me. Thanks, David Shoemaker, for helping me, and also Future for Humanity Project as well for helping me. Okay, the more help I can get, eventually we can do this, people. We can do it. Now's the time. Really think about it. Thank you very much. All right. Thanks, Ben. Got to run. Debt Nation, where we're busy putting death out of business. Think about it. Death out of business.